Hello, everyone, and welcome. I've got an exciting presentation for you all today, so thanks so much for being here. Tonight, we're going to go over verbal behavior. Let me know if sound is okay. I'm working with some different equipment today, so my main computer pooped out on me temporarily. It's going to get back, but working with some new equipment. So let me know how sound and everything is today, and I can see how I can adjust for y'all. Sweet, looking good. Awesome, awesome, awesome. How is everyone today? Looks like we only have a couple people here so far, so feel free to ask lots of questions. I'm totally open to give you as much as you need while you're here. I'm super glad that you guys are here. Hopefully get some more people later on, but thanks for coming. All right, let's get into our presentation. I'm also curious, have you guys been joining the study groups that have been going on? We've started doing 4 study groups a week with different student leaders, and they've been really fun. If you haven't caught those yet, definitely go check those out on the Understanding Behavior Active Studiers group on Facebook. Awesome, glad you guys have been enjoying those so far. I have my camera like right in the way of my chat. Let me like move this a little bit. And yeah, like I said, I'm on my laptop today, so who knows what's gonna happen, but it shouldn't be too much of an issue here. Also coming up, I have 2 mini courses. They are, let me put these on the screen real quick, just because I think these are really cool. We have a mini course coming up on 4/27. It's called The Tough Stuff. And it's a 4-hour course where we review schedules of reinforcement, so both basic and compound schedules, experimental design, as well as stimulus equivalence training. So that's going to be on 4/27. I think it's 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern time. And then the following Saturday, I think that's May the 4th, we're going to be doing the Fundamentals of Behavior course. So this one is really designed to get you to see behavioral contingencies everywhere in life. If you struggle with that in general, I would highly recommend signing up for this course. We've got a deal right now. If you use the code Course Bundle, you can get both course seats for just $85. Trust me, it's a really great value. We've had, I think, 50 students or so go through these courses. Nobody has rated this less than a 9 out of 10, and most people rate it a 10 out of 10 for both courses. So I'd highly recommend checking it out. Okie dokie. Well, let's get into our discussion for verbal behavior. Here's the agenda I created, but I think I even added a couple more things. So we've got a lot of fun little Easter eggs in this PowerPoint. So I'm really excited to show you guys. So we're going to talk about what is verbal behavior. We're going to talk about the difference between form versus function and why both of them are important. We'll also distinguish between verbal and vocal behavior. That's the one that trips a lot of people up sometimes. We'll talk about audience and speaker roles. We'll break down the verbal operants. We'll talk about formal similarity and point-to-point correspondence. We'll talk about tricky types of questions, and then there will be a quiz at the end. I promise you, I'm not going to bore you. It's not only going to be like active responding at the end. There's going to be active responding all throughout as well. But before we get super deep into things, I think we need to always set our definitions. And in this topic particularly, I think getting some of the history behind it is really important too. So what is verbal behavior? B.F. Skinner wrote the text verbal behavior in 1957. This is how he defined it. So it's behavior that's reinforced through the mediation of other persons. So that just means that other people are providing reinforcement for this behavior. But also look at this other part here, but these other persons must be responding in ways that which have been conditioned precisely in order to reinforce the behavior of the speaker. So kind of like what that means is that the communication is very intentional. Like both tracks have a history of reinforcement behind them. So a lot of people get this first part here, but I thought this was kind of a cool addition that I found in Cooper today, so I threw it into the PowerPoint as well. Let's go ahead and talk about function versus form of language. So as people studying for this exam, you should be pretty familiar with function, or both of these terms. We can make sense of them. So form of the behavior is essentially just what the behavior looks like. This could be like the type of verbal utterance. So this could include like a vocal speech sound. It could be engaging in a sign. It could be text itself, or it could be like an icon exchange, something like that. And then another part that goes into form of the response is something that I think that we sometimes neglect, is that form also refers to like what words that we choose, or like what phonemes, and like how we structure those words into sentences, so our grammar behind them. Those things also go into the form of the response, what the behavior looks like, what the topography is. Now, when we talk about function, I've got a lot on here. Sorry if this text is a little too small, but I got excited. So function, as we all know, is the history of context and consequences of these verbal responses. So Skinner was the one to argue that both of these things are very important. So both what the behavior looks like, the form of the response, but also what does this response result in the environment, and when does it occur in the environment? So looking at those antecedents and consequences. So when Skinner released his book in 1957, it was kind of a dud. Like nobody picked it up. If you've ever picked up verbal behavior, it's a very complex, very dense read. And for a very long time, nobody really understood it. But Skinner always talked about verbal behavior as it's his most important work. Like even later on in life, like near his deathbed, he said verbal behavior is the most important impact that I will have on this world, essentially. One other really big impact of verbal behavior is that he shows that language is not innate, but it is something that is learned. So there, we can find the context and consequences and reinforcement contingencies that support verbal behavior. Let's talk a little bit about Noam Chomsky. So, like I said, in 1957, when Skinner released verbal behavior, it was not, like, nobody really cared. Like, nobody picked it up. And then shortly after that, Noam Chomsky picked up verbal behavior. And Noam Chomsky, if you're not familiar, he's a linguistic and a philosopher, and he kind of has like a high profile, and people like him overall. And he was just like, nope, Skinner, this is just all wrong. Didn't really understand the textbook verbal behavior. So he was kind of like making like some just poor arguments that showed that like he didn't really understand the depth of the material. And he was just like, nope, Skinner, like behavior can't be, like verbal behavior can't be learned. It's totally ridiculous. Oh, sorry, I don't know how we got to the end here. Let me go way back here. Instead, Noam Chomsky was his argument and like explanation of language is that humans are special because we have this language acquisition apparatus inside of us that gives us the ability to communicate more than under other individuals. So yeah, definitely a way better explanation is just to like make something up, say that it's there, rather than like this really like well thought out explanation of verbal behavior within the context of behavior analysis and reinforcement contingencies. So anyway, I think this is just dumb. Like we're not that special. Like I think verbal behavior can be taught to other organisms, and there's not like a language acquisition apparatus inside of us that gives us this. I mean, we are unique in certain ways where our language has gotten way more complex than any other organism that we've seen, or at least have been able to comprehend. If you look at like some sea life, like dolphins and octopi, they might actually have some language. It's just in a format that we don't really understand. So, so Skinner's argument is like, yep, verbal behavior can be learned, and it's supported by the environment. Just like everything. Like I think like that's what I really love about behavior analysis, and I think what a lot of people dislike about behavior analysis is that behavior is not like some magical crazy thing. It's all can be stemmed from the environment. Do you guys ever think about that kind of stuff, or is that just me? Am I just the weird one? I always like to get like really deep with behavior analysis, but I've got like apparently you do too because you're here listening to me do it. So thanks for being here again. Um, and then just one more fun fact about Noam Chomsky. He was recently found donating money to Jeffrey Epstein. So I don't know if that says anything about his character. I think it does. Anyway, we'll move on from him. And that is all for my history lesson for now. Let's talk about the difference between vocal and verbal. So I think this distinction is actually a lot easier than a lot of people make it to be. The one trick that just like really clicked with me for this one is that vocal is produced by the vocal cords. Cool. So if you're making speech sounds created by the vocal cords, that's vocal. Verbal is any type of communication mediated by another individual. So it could be pointing to something, it could be screaming, it could be showing a picture of something, it could be like, it could be so many different things. But as long as it's fits Skinner's definition where the reinforcement is mediated by another individual and like they've been specifically trained to do that, then we have verbal behavior. Does anyone ever trip these up, vocal versus verbal? Does that make sense? How are you guys feeling? Cool, good, good. All right. Okay, well, let's keep moving on. Next up, we'll talk about audience versus speaker. Cool. Thank you, Ritza and Felicia and Laura. Awesome. Cool. Nice show, Marlene. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, so let's talk about audience versus speaker real quick. So, just like our basic contingencies, we always need to frame our contingency around like the person whose behavior we're analyzing, and that's going to be our speaker. Hey there, Doreen, welcome. So what's kind of interesting about this is that when you're analyzing the verbal behavior of others, that's going to be a stimulus to the speaker. And the opposite is true too, is like when we're, the verbal behavior of others is going to be a stimulus to the speaker. So if I'm speaking, your behavior is are stimuli to me, but if we're looking at your behavior, then my behavior are stimuli to you. So it's really important to get that kind of frame of context for our audience and speaker. And when we're talking about our audience, this could be your current audience, or it could also be like the broader verbal community. So for example, like depending on your audience, like it's gonna evoke different behavior. Like for example, when I'm on stream teaching behavior analysis, my verbal behavior is a little bit different than I'm like with my partner, if I'm just like out with my friends. So the context is gonna like kind of create like certain types of certain verbal behavior through stimulus control of verbal behavior. So, and then sometimes like, let's just say we are thinking. Thinking is kind of an interesting behavior. And sometimes when we think about thinking, we're like, that's mentalistic. Like we can't do that. But thinking is really just covert verbal behavior. The really like weird thing about thinking is that you serve as both the audience and the speaker. So it's kind of weird. But even then it kind of gets controlled by like a broader audience. So let's say like, you know, like the word, like rules of English. Like sometimes I say like something in my head incorrectly and I'm like, no, I actually meant to like say it like this. So I can like self-correct. So I'm like my own audience, but my audience is also like, influenced by everything that I've experienced before in the past. Cool, Joel, I'm glad you're here. I mean, anybody can learn about verbal behavior and behavior analysis, so I'm glad you're enjoying the presentation so far, and thanks for being here. All right, neato. Well, let's talk a little bit about verbal operants. This word, just looking at that single word operant, I think like it's a really intimidating word. But whenever you hear that word operant, I just want you to think about like a behavioral contingency. So thinking about an ABC relationship, antecedent behavior consequence. So literally anytime you see operant, you can just replace that to like contingency or like ABC relationship. So again, a verbal operant is a behavioral contingency that is reinforced by other individuals. Most of our operants actually have the same kind of consequence. I'm going to pull the chat real quick. Who knows what that consequence is for all of our verbal operants? There is one exception, one operant that doesn't have this, but every other verbal operant has the same kind of consequence or reinforcement. Anybody want to give that a go? Yeah, Laura saying GCR. Joe Marlene's GCR. What does that stand for, GCR? And I usually like to add one more letter in there too. Anybody want to try that? Spelling out GCR? And what's that one letter that I like to add? Anybody want to go for that? Good. Perfect. Yeah, nice show, Marlene and Felicia. Looks great. So yeah, this is going to be our generalized condition reinforcement. The S that I like to add is social. So I like to do GCSR as generalized condition social reinforcement. And when we think about this generalized condition social reinforcement, this is some combination of like praise, approval, and or coherence. So like, let's just say like something. I don't know. This is really dumb, but this is an example that came to my head. Like, let's just say I told you I pooped my pants. Like, I'm not gonna get praise or approval for that statement, but hopefully that will make sense to you and it will inform you of like what to do. I don't know why I thought about that. So it is coherent, but we're not necessarily like praised or approved. And like if I like correctly label something, that's gonna have like approval too. Like, so if I say like, hey, check out my new water bottle. You'll all be like, cool, yeah, that's a water bottle, sweet, Nick. I don't know why you're showing us. But if I said like, hey, check out my new pet lion, and I showed you this, people would be like, Nick, that's a water bottle, not a lion. So it kind of like wouldn't get that praise or approval. So it wouldn't be reinforced by that. So like the verbal community kind of reinforces like what verbal responses occur under what conditions, and that kind of determines like what responses occur in any given time. So the only exception for this generalized condition social reinforcement is the mand. So the mand is going to be reinforced by a specific reinforcer for that request. Now, usually when we're looking at our behavioral contingencies, we're focusing on the consequence of behavior. So the thing here that's a little bit weird is that for most of our verbal operants, they have the same consequence. So this GCSR. So really, like, we can't focus on the consequence because it's pretty much all the same. So what we're more focusing on in our verbal operants is the relation between the antecedent and, bringing back this word, the form of the behavior, what that behavior looks like. All right, let's go through our basic contingencies. So I've got a fun little exercise for y'all here. We have the antecedent, behavior, and consequence. For time's sake, why don't you guys try all three of these at once? So we're going to look at the man first. What is the antecedent? What does the behavior look like? And then what is the consequence? That's funny. Somebody is logged in on their kid's account. Sly Cheeseburgers, Tucky. That's a cool name, Sly Cheeseburgers. That's creative. I don't know what a Sly Cheeseburger is like, but I'll take it. All right, so again, we are going for this whole entire contingency. If you want to label the antecedent, behavior, and consequence, don't be shy. It's a safe place, and practicing and failing is the only way you're gonna learn. So let's see who wants to give it a go. I know some people like to like see the first one and kind of like get the format. I kind of understand that. So maybe I'll show this first one, but if I do, I'm gonna need lots of participation before. Oh man, I just did a bribe, not reinforcement. So again, I'm asking for you to label like what is what are the ABCs for a man? Good. Yeah, Felicia's got it. Perfect. Let's go check it out. So for the man, our antecedent is an establishing operation. So something making something more reinforcing or punishing. Then our behavior is a request for that specific reinforcer. The consequence for that is the specific reinforcer. Nice. Jo Marlene right behind her as well. So those are the ABCs. EO, the behavior request for that reinforcer. Consequence, receive that reinforcer. All right, cool. Let's try for the tact now. So again, we're going to do our ABCs. What are the common antecedent behavior consequences for a tact? Good. Yeah, Felicia's on it. Loving it. Cool. Anybody else want to go for that one? All right, let's check it. We've got here a nonverbal stimulus as our antecedent. So not necessarily an SD, it's just going to be a nonverbal stimulus. The behavior is a label of that stimulus. And then our consequence is our GCSR. I'm going to encourage you guys to put that S in your, some people just put in GCR. I would put the S in there. No, that's social reinforcement for this behavior instead of just like any conditional reinforcement. All right, very cool. How about our intraverbal? Who wants to give this frame a go? Cool. Yeah, I'm liking it. Jo Marlene and Felicia are killing it. Keep it up. So here is our contingency. We have a verbal stimulus as our antecedent. Our behavior is going to just be like some related verbal response. So some people like specify like answering a question or something like that. This is just kind of a little bit like broader way to think about that. So a related verbal response kind of fits that question or conversation modality. Consequence, again, going to be GCSR, generalized condition, social reinforcement. All right, let's take a break from those and now talk about formal similarity versus point-to-point correspondence. Does anybody struggle with these before? These are a little tricky for sure. They're like so similar, but like a little different. All right, let's talk about formal similarity first. So we can kind of just use our logic here to solve what this is. So the formal is the response form, and then the similarity is going to be that they're similar. So if we're comparing antecedents and responses, so that's going to be that those two things are similar in response form. So here's that chart just for a sec because Doreen requested. Hopefully we're good here. And then let's go continue. So again, it's a relation between an antecedent and a behavior. And then the response form is the same, and the content of the response is the same. So some people think about it's like like vocal and vocal. That's part of it, but it also has to be the same response. So it's like vocal response that says this and vocal response that says the same thing. So both things are required for formal similarity. Only our duplex are going to have formal similarity. We'll talk about duplex in a sec. And then we have point-to-point correspondence. So again, this is a relation between our antecedent and behavior. And this is some kind of like meaningful and exact relation between stimulus and behavior. So for example, if we had a textual behavior, for example, that has a written antecedent and it's a vocal response. So it's essentially like reading out the written stimulus. So those letters correspond perfectly to the sounds of that textual behavior because you're reading the words that are there. So it's a meaningful and exact relation, but they're not in the same response form. Our duplex and our codics are going to have our point-to-point correspondence, where again, only our duplex have formal similarity. Alrighty. Cool. We've got 15 people here now. That's exciting. Make sure to invite your friends if you haven't already yet. Really, like the best way to support the channel is just spread the word, tell your friends about it, and grow this audience because I think a lot of students are going to enjoy this content. All right, so let's go over duplex first. Easy way to think about duplex is that these are just verbal operants where we are duplicating our antecedents. And sorry, my camera is over this here, but these do have both point-to-point correspondence and formal similarity once again. All right, so let's go over the echoic first. This one should be fairly familiar to you. We're going to do same kind of deal. So labeling out our whole entire contingency, the antecedent, behavior, and consequence. Who wants to give that a go in chat? Yeah, Addie Lana said that like it's echoic, has the same form and point-to-point. So that's what we got here. We've got the duplex, has that point-to-point and formal similarity. Ooh, a lot of people are saying verbal stimulus is our antecedent. What do you think? Is it a verbal stimulus or a vocal stimulus for an echoic? We talked about that earlier. All right, consensus is vocal, and y'all are absolutely right. Perfect. So here's our contingency. We've got a vocal antecedent. Again, not verbal, vocal, created by vocal cords. The behavior is a copy of that vocal antecedent, and then we have our GCSR. We have mimetic here now. This one may be less familiar, kind of a weird term. What do you guys think? Anybody want to give this one a go for our contingency? I'll give you a hint. Like, this is kind of like, oh, okay, Felicia's kind of on it, right? All right, all right. I would just add, there's one word I would add to yours, Felicia, and it would be perfect. So Addie's talking about sign, kind of related. Yeah, what about sign language, though? Sign language, remember, it's not about the form of the response, it's about the function of the response. So sign language could be a man, it could be a tact, it could be mimetic, it could be so many different things. It could be an intraverbal. All right, let's check this one out. So Felicia was really close on here. The only word we needed to add is that our antecedent is a motor verbal stimulus. So it's a motor action that has some kind of communication function. The behavior is a copy of that motor verbal stimulus, and then our reinforcement is the GCSR. Felicia, you got it. You should be proud of your answer. That was great. So motor verbal stimulus. Remember, we're always talking about verbal stimuli here. So an example of this might be like copying a sign, or let's just say like I gave you a peace sign, then you gave me a peace sign back. I do this daily. All right, last one, copying text. I feel like it's just like the term is so simple. Who wants to diagram the contingency for me? The ABCs of copying text. All right, looking good. Yeah, Felicia and Joe Marlene right on it. Anybody else want to give that a go? Don't be shy. All right. Well, this one is going to be our written stimulus for the antecedent. We're going to copy that written stimulus for the behavior. And once again, we've got our GCSR, that generalized condition social reinforcement. All right. Last two, we've got our codics. So again, these have point-to-point correspondence, but they do not have formal similarity. So let's give it a go. We're doing textual behavior now. Let's diagram our ABCs. Who wants to go for it? Also, really quick, easy way to support the channel, smash that like button on this video. It does a lot to push it up in the algorithm, so it'd be super appreciated. Free and takes half a second. Great way to support. Thank you to everyone who has done so already. All right, let's go ahead and check out our textual behavior first. So antecedent for this one is going to be a written antecedent. The behavior is reading the text. So again, I like to think about textual behaviors just like reading. And then our consequence is going to be, again, our GCSR. Nice, we're up more than twice the amount of likes now. Thank you so much, guys. So textual, simple way to think about it is just like reading. So you see something written, you read out what it has, what it says, and then there's approval there. Again, that has the point-to-point correspondence where there is like exact relations between the written words and what you say. But it doesn't have formal similarity because one's written, one is vocal. All right, transcription, kind of similar but a little bit flipped. Who wants to give it a go for this contingency? Transcription. Let's get those ABCs. Ooh, Ty is so close. Ty just got changed to one word. All right, Felicia's on it. There you go, Ty. Perfect. Love it, love it, love it. Let's review this one. Nice, Joe Marlene too. Good. This one is going to be a vocal stimulus as our antecedent. So transcription is kind of like transcribing in court. Our behavior is going to be write the words that were contained in the vocal stimuli. So again, we're writing down what happens. It's a different response form, but it is the same content. So it has point-to-point correspondence. And no surprise here, we have GCSR as our reinforcement. All right, we have one more verbal operant to discuss here. This one is going to be listener responding, and then I've got some fun questions for y'all. So in listener responding, this is responding to the verbal communication of another individual in a specific way. So in this one, we have antecedent, touch ball. The response is that they touch the ball, and then there's going to be GCSR. Who would have thought? So here's our contingency again. We have a verbal instruction. Note this one says verbal, doesn't necessarily have to be vocal. Could be like a text from mom, like, make sure to let the dog out. And responding to that would be listener responding as well. Behavior, again, following that instruction. And consequence, who would have thought? GCSR. All right, I've got one more slide here before we get into the fun questions. So we're going to talk about tricky stuff. This is how the exam might try to trick you on verbal operants. So if you're preparing for the exam soon, or if you're taking some mock exams, this is where you really want to listen up. So the first up is when there are multiple verbal responses or speakers in the questions. The way to combat this is stay very oriented on whose behavior the question is asking about. Super important. Another thing to think about, I've seen some students get tripped up on, is that you don't always need to look at what is happening in the current moment. You need to think about the past history of the response. If we think about the law of effect, we know the effects of our actions, so what we've experienced in the past, determines whether or not we're going to engage in behavior. So it's not necessarily what's happening right now. If it's reinforced in this way right now, we want to think about what happened in the past and if that was enough to evoke this behavior, that past history of reinforcement. Super important. The other way that questions might try to trick you is with some weird antecedents. Here is just a few examples. This is a small amount of them, so keep your eye out for more. The first one might be like motor communication or interverbal frames. So if you either see like a motor communication as like the antecedent or the response itself, sometimes that can get a little bit tricky about like what kind of operand it is. Another kind of tricky thing is like tacting like abstract traits or feelings, like something like I feel like really down today, like that's technically a tact. Or if we say like, oh my god, that is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, even though like that could possibly like be objectified in some way, but I think that's stupid to do. But anyway, it's kind of abstract and not clear, but it's still attacked. It's still evoked by that nonverbal antecedent. So watch out for those kind of situations. The last one that I have on my list here for tricky stuff is disguised operants. So here's just one example of that. If it's like something that like looks like attack but is actually like a concealed man. So one example I really like of this is like if you're at a party and you're like, wow, that pizza smells really good. Like, okay, it kind of seems like attack because we have nonverbal stimulus, label of that nonverbal stimulus. But let's say that this has a history of getting offered a slice of pizza. Now this is actually a concealed man. So the operant changed due to like the history of reinforcement behind it. So you kind of need to look at like what that history of reinforcement is. So watch out for weird situations like that. All right, here we go. So I know you guys love multiple choice questions, especially when there's 9 answer options, right? All right, here's our first one. June grabs her dog's attention and says, "Come here." June's dog comes. What verbal operant did the dog display? We're starting light. Sweet, we're up to 23 people here now. Welcome everyone. You came to the juicy part. We're doing some questions. Now that, I mean, this is one juicy part, but everybody else who was here knows that we had a lot of juicy parts earlier. We got a trash on Noam Chomsky, who like gave money to Epstein. That was great, super fun. We got a history lesson on Skinner's verbal behavior. Y'all missed out. You better come watch this replay. All right, I'm liking it. A lot of people saying I here. And you know, I mean, I think a lot of you guys have been to my streams before, but you know, if you provide a rationale, then your answer like really sticks out and looks cool. Good to see some familiar faces here. Hey there, Camellia. All right. This one is going to be I, listener responding. So the dog responded to the instruction. That was a verbal operant. They were given instruction, they followed, and then there was that praise, approval, all that good stuff. Switch. All right, let's check out number 2. Remy had to run to the bathroom during an important lecture. He asked his neighbor to see their notes real quick to write down. Which verbal operant best describes the writing of the notes? Yeah, Juliana had that rationale in the last one. Heck yeah. Ooh, we got a lot of different answers now. That's why those rationales are going to be super important. All right, Joe Marlene's got a good rationale here. Addie too. All right, let's check it. Good, nice tie. This one is going to be F, copying text. So he saw the written stimuli, and then he copied those written stimuli over to his notes. This one is F. Yeah, tricky, Allie. So there was a man in here. That's why it's really important to stay focused on what operant it's talking about. So this one was the writing of the notes, not asking for the notes. So kind of tricky there. Definitely something to watch out for. All right, Harold asks, want to play ball after school? Jamie replies, I'm down. Let's do it. Which verbal operant best describes Jimmy's behavior? All right, looking pretty Gucci over here. Cool, yeah, Juliana, love the rationales. Keep them up. That's how you're going to learn. Good, yeah, nice Felicia. Diagram that whole ABC. I love it. Good, nice tie. Great, Addie. Loving this that rationales, crew. Keep it up. All right, this one is going to be C, our interverbal. So yeah, Harold asked the question. That was kind of like a man for information. And then Jimmy's response was the interverbal. Very cool. All right. Well, I had fun with this one. Well, while stuck in Sandy's dome, SpongeBob croaks out, Sandy, I need water. Sandy replies, a wallet, a watch, and does not provide him water. Which verbal operant best describes SpongeBob's behavior? All right, couldn't fool you guys here. Perfect. Yeah, nice, Juliana. Caught my little trick there. Love it. BCBA one day. Welcome. I believe in you. All right. Cool. Very nice, crew. This one is going to be a man. So even though he did not receive water in this circumstance, we still have the man frame. So it was evoked by that establishing operation for water. We have the verbal response that has specific reinforcement with getting water. Again, it doesn't matter what's happening in the moment. It matters more about the past history of this response. So this does still fit our man framework because this was likely to have been reinforced with water in the past. All right, we've got one more set of these, a few more here. Gary, I just realized I probably did. I chose the name Gary because the last one was SpongeBob. I just realized that. That's kind of funny. Anyway, Gary is texting while driving when another driver honks at him and flips him off. Gary puts his phone down and flips him off back. Which verbal operant best describes Gary flipping the driver off? All right, looking pretty Gucci so far. Cool, yeah, Felicia with the rationale. She's been killing it with those. BCBA 1 days on their way. On the way to the BCBA. Sorry, guys, I'm worse. Anyway, this one is going to be e-memetic. A lot of people got that. So this was a motor verbal response. So this kind of communicates, what that thing that YouTube doesn't like me to say, off. And we had the same antecedent and the same response. So there was that motor verbal imitation that occurred, making it a memetic. Alrighty, next one. A behavior nerd. Here's an epic Skinner quote at the UB study hall. And here's the quote. And what a strange discovery for a would-be tyrant that the only effective technique of control is unselfish. And then they write it down for later. Which verbal operant best describes writing down the quote? Apparently, it was really funny. Like my Facebook memories, apparently I was in like my second year of grad school, and this was my Facebook post today. It was that quote. So like, all right, I'm bringing it in. It's a cool quote. Cool, I'm liking it. Yeah, Ty with the rationale, Camellia with the rationale. Perfect. Yeah, nice Felicia. Laura killing it. Great answers, everyone. Good. I'm glad you guys like my heinous everything. All right, this one is going to be transcription. So he heard the quote, and then you write the quote down. If you are this behavior nerd at the UB study hall, you might be engaging in a different opera, maybe some copying text if you like this quote. I think it's pretty cool. All right, this is my last question, but I've got a cool slide after this. It's not just selling you stuff, it's really cool stuff. So stay tuned. Okay, next one here. While riding a roller coaster, Carla says, I don't feel so good, and vomits on her friend sitting next to her. Getting off the ride, her friend says to Carla, you need to figure this out, bitch. Carla finds them a shower and clean clothes, then they continue riding more coasters. Which verbal operant best describes Carla's response on the roller coaster? Cool, cool. I'm loving that. Like the rationales are becoming more automatic. Love it, crew. Keep it up. All right, loving the responses here. Great job with all the rationales, crew. Keep it up. This one is going to be B, our tag. So she was feeling a certain sensation, and then she labeled that sensation. And apparently there was like some coherence and approval with this because her friend faced the consequences of that. All right. Well, this is going to kind of be like a sneak peek into a future presentation that will probably happen in like next week or two. But essentially, new developments of Skinner's work on verbal behavior. This has expanded quite a bit recently, looking at relational frame theory, RFT. I know some of you guys have probably studied a little bit about RFT. Because it was kind of like thrown on the task list a little bit, but like nobody really knows like how much it's going to be on the exam. But anyway, I think it's really cool. Stimulus equivalence training was something that Skinner came up with. So this was seeing emergent relationships between stimuli that are equal to each other. So for example, like knowing that the word cat is also like the picture of a cat, which is also like the animal cat in real life, and knowing that all those things are equal. The cool thing about relational frame theory is that it takes the same principle of symmetry and transitivity, but they put like new words to it, and that's really all it is. And it shows that this can happen with different types of relationships as well. So here's one example. This is a hierarchical relationship. So it's not an equivalence relationship. So in this one, we know Miranda is faster than me, and I'm faster than Rupert. So based off of these two connections, we can get 4 more connections that can be derived from that, but these aren't necessarily like equal relationships. So all of these have been faster relationships. So if I know that if Miranda is faster than me and I'm faster than Rupert, then I know Rupert is slower than Miranda. I also know Rupert is slower than me, and I'm slower than Miranda, and also that Miranda is faster than Rupert. So it's the same kind of relationships with symmetry and transitivity. So like we taught 2 relationships and then 4 emerged from that. But it's a really huge development in understanding how language emerges automatically, because we know, like as humans, that we don't need to be like explicitly trained every single thing, that we kind of come up with ideas on our own and make connections on our own. So I will be doing a little presentation on RFT in the near future. Honestly, it's not like I'm not an expert in RFT. There are some way bigger RFT geeks out there than me, but I think I can help give a good summary and kind of like show you the scale of impact that RFT is going to have on the world. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be really fun. All right, anyway, thank you guys so much for coming. We are going to wrap up for the evening. Last thing I just wanted to mention is that we do have some mini courses coming up. We have the Fundamentals of Behavior mini course. That mini course, again, is really geared at looking at behavioral contingencies and seeing them everywhere in life. We're also going to be going into motivating operations and discriminative stimuli and how those operate. The Tough Stuff mini course, it goes over schedules, both compound and basic schedules of reinforcement. We're going to go over stimulus equivalence training, so kind of get you a little bit more preamped for that RFT stuff, and then experimental design. So the Tough Stuff course is on 4/27. The fundamentals will be the following weekend on 5/4. You can use the code course bundle at checkout at the Understanding Behavior store. Let me give you a link for that. And you can get both of those courses for $85. Like I said, we've had a ton of students go through both of these courses. Nobody has ever given it less than a 9 out of 10. They're really solid courses. You're going to have a really good time, I promise. I'll probably lose my voice in it because the Tough Stuff is a 4. I think it's 4, maybe 4.5 hours. It's a really long course, but it's really fun. And anyway, that's all I have for now. We'll be back next week. We'll do something fun. Maybe I'll have the RFT one ready, but we'll probably do something else instead. Keep attending all the study groups. Check out all the cool stuff. Stay tuned because even bigger and cooler things are happening in the Understanding Behavior camp. Thanks again. I'm glad you guys enjoyed this presentation. I hope to see you around some events soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.